further questions, we'll put on notice.
Okay, thanks, Senator Chisholm. Senator McDonald, I think you have a brief series of questions you might want to ask.
Absolutely. Try and keep them brief, Chair. Mr Longo, with the transfer of responsibility for the financial advisor exam from FASEA to ASIC, can you provide me with an overview of the discussions over recent months that ASIC have had with the government and FASEA on this handover? And when will the full transition take place and what might that look like?
That's a big question, Senator. There's been a lot of work been done with Treasury to prepare for the single disciplinary body reforms that will take effect from the beginning of January. And we're working very closely with Treasury to ensure that we can run the exam efficiently and to meet all the requirements of the Better Advice Bill. I know that's a very high-level response. I don't know whether that's sufficient for today. Happy to give you more detail as a question on notice. That's one of my, whether Commissioner Press would like to supplement my response. But
in the interests of time, because I will have limited time, I just wonder, when will you be in a position to announce the more fulsome plans for the financial advisor exam in 2022, including the dates?
I couldn't tell you right now when we'll be making the regulations in connection with that bill have only recently been released. We are putting a lot of work into getting ready to assume our new role or expanded role beginning of January. I don't know whether Commissioner Press can help me on when we plan to publish more information about that, but I suspect it's imminent.
It is imminent, but we are working with ASA to get a new contract in place, and until that contract is in place, we won't be able to tell you what the dates are going to be. But we do know that it's important for advisors to have those dates, and we will be putting them out as soon as we can.
Thank you. Following the June 2021 Senate estimates hearings, a question on notice, BT 177 from Senator Brockman, about how much of ASIC's High Court case against Westpac relating to their superannuation funds operating a general advice-based call centre to encourage members to consolidate their super fund accounts, where the High Court found that it was personal advice. Now, this seems to be alarming because these were super funds owned by a big bank that were, through a call centre, providing services that they claim were general advice, and yet ASIC has chosen to charge 60% of the cost of this action to the predominantly small business financial advisor sector. This was illegal conduct by a super fund. Why don't the super funds pay 100% for this? How can you argue that the majority of this action should be paid for by small business financial advisors? And are you aware of any other similar cases where there's been an unfair allocation of costs to financial advisors?
Senator, that question is really a question about how the industry funding model works. And again, we can take aspects of that under notice, but I'm wondering whether Warren, the COO, or Commissioner Press wants to give you a more detailed response. But essentially, the allocation of costs is driven by the industry funding model, by law, and so I think that's essentially the answer. But I don't know whether Warren or Commissioner Press would elaborate on that.
Apologise, Senator, you broke up halfway through that question, but in relation to the allocation within the matter, my understanding was those matters did relate to financial advice aspects from the superannuation funds, but I'm happy to take that on further notice if you like, but unless Commissioner Press has something to add.
Thank you. Well, I will provide that question on notice for further advice. And finally, since the commencement of the Protect Your Super and Putting Members' Interests First reforms, can I ask for some visibility on consumer complaints in relation to super fund members who've lost their life, TPD, and possibly their income protection insurance? Who are they lodging complaints against, and are these complaints being lodged with APRA or ASIC?
Thank you, Senator. In terms of complaints about superannuation in relation to those types of matters, Obviously, with the formation of the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, complaints about superannuation are generally now going to AFCA. It may be that there are some complaints that have also been made to ASIC, and I'm quite happy to take on notice us looking for those. In relation to the complaints that might relate to that to APRA, I guess we'd have to have that question asked of APRA. And I understand they're following us in this hearing, so you get the opportunity to ask them there. In relation to the complaints about superannuation funds in the ways that you've asked in relation to AFCA, I mean, I don't have that data available to me at this time, and I suspect AFCA might be able to better provide that information. But as I said, I'm more than happy to take on notice and look at the complaints we've received in relation to super funds in relation to the matters you've raised.
Yes, Chair, I will follow up on both of those last few questions on notice, because I haven't received an answer and I would like to better understand particularly the allocation of costs and now this issue of superannuation of insurance. And finally, I'm just trying to get an understanding of how the current arrangements for the oversight of unlicensed operators work. Financial advisors are subject to careful oversight of their licences by ASIC. What oversights are accountants, and I'm referring to Mr Papalia in WA, subject to that might have helped to reveal this kind of alleged misconduct that's seemingly been going on for nearly 20 years?
I'm not sure that I fully understand the question, Senator, but in relation to issues relating to unlicensed financial advice provided by accountants, again, I'm happy to go away and look at a more detailed question about that, provide you information about ASIC's activities in relation to unlicensed financial advice, particularly as it relates to accountants.
Thank you. It's following on because the ABC ran a series of stories on this case and kept referring to the gentleman as an accountant and a financial advisor, despite him not being a financial advisor. And given the oversights that are on licensed financial advisors, I'm wondering what oversight there is for ASIC to protect the industry. Given the strict regime that financial advisors are held under. So would you be going back to ABC and asking them to rectify their stories?
That's a matter for the ABC in terms of that. I mean, I don't think there's a limit, as you know, on the people calling the financial advisors, but there's a lot of people out there, as we know, who call themselves financial advisors but aren't and don't hold licences. But in relation to the way the ABC refers to a particular person, I don't know that there's anything we could add to that.
Well, but then you shouldn't be regulating anybody if you're not going to protect there's a significant cost to regulating financial advisors. If you're not going to provide any protections to that industry, then, what's...
I'm not saying for a minute, Senator, that we're not saying that we won't look at and not take action against someone who is providing unlicensed financial advice. What I'm saying is how the ABC, in one of its own journalistic stories, might refer to a person is not something that I think that we could necessarily do anything other than educate what the rules are to the ABC, and I don't know how that would make any difference.
Oh, I think it would be a starting point if you've communicated with them that their story is incorrect, because it is incorrect, it's misleading, and if you don't provide advice to the ABC, I'm not sure who else is going to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Just Chair, before we move on,
Minister?
I just clarify
yes, Minister.
For the Senator that on the issue of the industry funding model, Senator McDonald would know that the government's providing temporary and targeted relief for financial advisors in recognition of the transition of the industry funding model during the Hayne-Royal Commission recommendation implementation. So this will see ASIC levies charged for personal financial advice to retail clients restored to their 2018 and 19 levels of $1,142 per advisor for the next 2 years. And the flat per licensee charge will remain at $1,500. So that's a 60 3% reduction relative to the level estimated in ASIC's 2020 and 2021 cost recovery implementation statement, which said that the levy was going to be imposed at $3,138 per advisor. And while this temporary relief is in place, the ASIC industry funding model will be reviewed by Treasury to ensure that it remains fit for purpose for the long term.
Excellent. Thank you, Minister. I think we've now exhausted all of our questions for ASIC. There will be questions put on notice, an opportunity for further questions to be put on notice. If I could thank you, Chair Longo, and your team for providing. There was a lot of topics covered during that session. It was incredibly useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. That's very generous.
And we'll now move to the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority.